In fact, we're going to break it up into various segments. Today on my show, now some of you know him and you know his wife, Ruckins and Rosalind McKinley. And they are not only great ministers, great performers, great artists, but they're also friends of Kim and Jay and Clement of KCC, and therefore they're friends of you, my partners. So, put the camera on them so they can see what they look like. Hi, you guys. So good to have you here. You look just gorgeous, by the way. So good to have you. And so, partners, enjoy this time together. They're going to tell you stories. You're going to see clips. And some of them are really funny, and I don't know if I'm able to approve them. But apparently they think they should be there, and my production team think that you should see this of me dancing with Ruckins 1996 at the Gathering of the Dangerous. And I was in Detroit, and you'll notice something. I'm in the middle, stuck between Charlie and then there's Ruckins. He taught me this dance, just to give you an idea of how he wrote me into this. And then I think I may have suggested it, actually. I think I said, teach me. All I know is you came to my hotel room and I was so tired by the time I'd finished because you made me practice this without you. So I was in there doing it over and over and over. So anyway, this is a lot of fun. I'm gonna actually start by letting you see that before I move you into their own production and, you know, where they come from. So let's go to that now. Enjoy it. This is, you'll see me there. You'll see Charlie there. And we're dancing at Gathering of the Dangerous. And just in the background, you'll see little Miranda with her braces and her glasses on. And that's where I found her. And I think Hannah was there too that night. Hannah was there too that night. Short hair? Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Watch this. Isn't that amazing? 1996. And you made me do that. Now, okay, before we show them about the piece about with you dancing, the two of you. And who was interviewing at the time, by the way?
That was Eric Boardman.
Of ABC?
ABC.
Okay.
Of a show called 330 with Steve Edwards, who is still doing shows today. Yeah.
Okay, so we want to hear about you, how it started, and then I'll show them the clip because you guys are going to absolutely love this. You'll see them at the age of 20 dancing, and that's where it started. Today, Ruckins is a prophet. Just so that you know from my point of view, and how I feel about him. He's a prophet. He developed into that gift was there right from young, but it was in his body, so to speak. It was in his dance. And Rosalind, but today he is a recognized prophet of the Lord, and has in fact gone to nations that I went to way before he started. I think it was in the 80s that I went to Australia, and then became a voice there in Australia and in South Africa and other countries of the world, where I felt, and the Spirit told me that this is my voice extended there. In other words, I don't need to go there. Anyway, just so you know, for those that don't know this, he is a prophet, and you can just tell them how it all started. First, let's start with the dance. You started when you were 8.
When I was 8 years old. I remember just sitting down and watching people like James Brown, and I just, I would just love to dance, just doing the robot. It was my way of expression. It was my way of escape. And it was the only thing that I felt that I was good at was the dance.
Wow.
And I hadn't met Rosin obviously back then, but I was a young lad, and dance was all I knew. And I was raised in the church, and but the way I danced and the way the church danced was totally different.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to go out and dance in the streets with my cousins in San Francisco, California, on Fisherman's Wharf, and entertain the tourists and so on. And you fast forward to 13 years old, I had danced my way into my own television show called Live on 25.
Wow.
And I would dance on the show and talk about, dysfunctional families in the community and things of that nature. And then I moved from Northern California to Southern California at the age of 15, and met my wife Rosalind in high school. And that's where our dancing career started together in high school.
Now, Rosalind, when you were interviewed on the interview, which we'll go and watch in a few minutes, the guy said to you, what did you think of? And you used some sort of expression. What was it?
I said he was a popping fool. He still gives me a hard time for saying that.
A popping fool. Okay. So what is a popping fool? So you were obviously jumping around and stuff. Is that a lot of energy?
Define that, dear. You never did define that.
In
for
high
me.
school, I was a bookworm, and all you did was dance. So that was.
So that made me
so
a fool.
you loved reading.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Hence your educational.
Yes, yes. She was a 4.0 and all of that.
The one thing, I was really, really bad at school. I couldn't learn in South Africa in those days, with the prejudice and all the trouble. That was only the Africans and the blacks that were separated. Now, they were separated physically and geographically and mistreated, but they also despised and hated the English people. So if you were English, whether you were, from Italian heritage or whatever, if you were English, you were mistreated. I remember going to the army for the defense and during the 1976 Angolan War, and them despising and hating me as an English person. And at school, it was the same thing. There was this, if you didn't make it, you were called names and everything. But one thing I did love was reading. I loved reading. And so that helped me later on because I failed. I failed school. I was out. Jacob was asking me yesterday. He said, "Dad, which grade did you make?" So I said, I was expelled at grade 8, but I'd already failed twice, so I should have been in grade 10. That was my education. So when people hear me speak and minister, they say, "Wait, something's not right. You didn't." And it was because I read. Anyway, it was just to help the people. You need to read, because that's what Pam keeps telling Jacob. Read. Okay, you were a bookworm, so that expression was a little unusual for a bookworm. But anyway, so
and I was, like she said, I was a dancer. When I met her in high school, I was already dating someone else that we were most likely to be married, most likely to succeed, and da-da-da-da.
Oh, okay.
And everyone else in the school was so awestruck by Mean Mr. Lean. That was my dancing name. I just do a move and everyone would scream. She was the only person in the school that didn't care who I was and didn't know who I was.
Good.
And I think that was a God thing.
That's kept you. That's kept you.
Even throughout these years, she's kept me very, very balanced, through
How long have you been married?
We just hit, let's see if you remember. I know. I'm going to see if you do it.
23 years?
23 years, and we celebrated our anniversary, our 25th anniversary, just last year. So it's 26. She's messing with me.
In this day and age,
26 years.
In this day and age, it's first of all commendable. What a legacy for a generation, for your children. But and that deserves what you gave me. honor, because this generation are looking for that. They're looking for fathers, and that's what they're crying out for. So let's watch the clip. You've got to see this. This is Ruckins and Roz. What did you call yourselves?
The R&R Express.
The R&R Express. Ruck and Roz.
That's it.
Okay. Watch this.
And I am told, I am promised, that Eric Boardman has the hottest, the best street dancers in the world.
Yes.
Let's go to Eric right now.
Steve and Lisa, I'm down at the Santa Monica Pier. Of course, I came down for a little sunshine. We didn't get that. It is gray and chilly down here. I swear it is. It was warm in Hollywood when I left. But I came down because of all the skills that I have, I'll bet you didn't know that I am a street dancer. So I thought I'd come down and see some street dancers down here, maybe give them some tips, an old veteran like myself, showing these kids how to do it. Now, they look good, but maybe they appreciate some tips from myself, and maybe I'll learn a few things. You never know. Here's something I call the marionette.
1, 2, 3.
Let's go solo! No, you're crazy. If you thought I was going to follow them, you're crazy. Hang on. I want you to meet my friends, Steve and Lisa. Oh, I did not just happen upon these folks. These two, this is Rocky and Roz. They call themselves the R&R Express. Now, they started out about 18 months down here as street dancers. They were stone broke. Now, to sent your names, they've been thrown out of their apartment. At that point, just hustling tips. And now, Rocky, where are you today, 18 months later?
Boy, well, now we're both into acting, and we are both registered with the Screen Actors Guild.
And this all started because you got exposure down here as a street dancer.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. At that point, we were really just trying to make it, trying to live day by day, which was very hard at our age. And
well, you still really haven't made it because you still got a bare belly. But they can't afford full clothes yet, but they will. Roz, when did you guys start dancing?
A year ago.
And you met, by the way, they are husband and wife.
And we met in high school.
Eric?
High school sweethearts. Yes, Steve?
We are sitting here wondering how old they look so young. How old are they?
Well, I know they're young because they got me out of breath. They want to know how old you are. Do you mind revealing your age, Roz?
You look so old, Eric.
I'm 20.
She's 20. That's 17 years younger than I am. And Rocky, you are?
I'm 20. I'll be 21 in June.
Oh, he's an old man, nearly 21.
Let me ask you a question, both of you. Are you self-taught or have you studied?
Lisa wants to know, are you self-taught? Who does the choreography?
We both do the choreography. I am self-taught. I've been doing it since I was 8. I studied a little mime with Shields and Yarnell at the age of 8 in San Francisco. And since then, I've just been mainly putting it together myself and teaching my wife, and we're coming up with a new style of dance form, which is more or less mime to music.
Mime to music, okay. Were you impressed with his dancing the first time you saw him? Let's go back to high school when you met that guy. What was the first thing you thought when you saw Rocky?
He was a popping fool.
He was a popping fool. Now, that's a street dance term. You would know that one. That's something that we coined here. Enough palaver. I want to see you guys do your stuff. Okay, let's see why they're about to get a contract to perform in Vegas. Isn't that true?
Yes, and plus we have the ABC promo that will be airing in August.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, here is the rock and roll, excuse me, the R&R Express.
R&R Express. How about that? Thank you, Eric.
Back to you, Steve.
Okay.
Oh, that's terrific.
R&R.
That's outstanding. I loved it. See, now, this is one thing I remember about you, because I've asked you to dance a number of times, and I know that you've been through your struggles. Physically, I know that you've had struggles with your back. And, you can just share as you feel, how you've got to this place. You remember the prophetic, and of course, all of you are going to hear teachings by Ruckins, which is just fantastic, really powerful, good perspective. But what he does is he also speaks about the prophetic influence that I had on his life, which you can obviously share if you wish, bring up some words. It'll help the people, because the one thing I've found with everyone is that not everyone, but a lot of people, is that they want a word, but they don't know what to do with it. I'll never forget a person that you and I both know very well, but I won't mention his name. He used to follow me everywhere, and he'd say, if I could just get a name, if I could just get a name. I said, but why would you why are you so worried about getting a name or an address? He said, and his point at the time was, well, I can take a great offering after that. And you know what I found out? I discovered in my meetings that when I give words, we get the worst offering. And I'll tell you why. Because there's an element of disappointment. You gave 12 people a word, 600 of them never got it. So they say, I'm not going to give. People are just selfish like that.
They miss the main point.
Absolutely.
They don't understand that it's not the prophetic word that are given that brings the greatest impartation. The greater impartation is the corporate mantle that you bring from the moment you walk in the room. And I was like that for years, and as a baby Christian following you, because I had the gift of the word of knowledge and the word of wisdom inside me as a child, and I was raised Baptist, and no one believed in tongues. It was the devil and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't have anybody to explain to me what these things were that would happen in my life. And I know many of you out there have probably experienced some of these things too, because this is a prophetic generation that we are now in. And Kim, one of the things that I'll never forget, my father and I were driving back from San Francisco to Los Angeles. I was a young boy. I was 9 years old or so, maybe a little younger, and I was looking out the back window like kids like to do, and all I could see far down the road was these headlights of a car coming, and it was so far away. But I told my dad, I said, Daddy, you have to change lanes. And he said, why? I said, that car's gonna hit you. And he said, what car? I said, the car way back is gonna hit you. And he said, oh, just be cool, just lay down. And he kept doing what he was doing. I kept watching. The car got closer, 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 and smashed the right side of the car and took off. And I remember my father, I'll never forget, he pulled over and he looked back at me with this look on his face like, he wanted to say something. And I said, I tried to tell you, Daddy. And I could tell he was perplexed. How did he know that? Well, these things started happening to me. I would see people in my family that were about to die, and they would die. And what happened to me was I got afraid, because I thought, because I saw the car hitting my dad's car, and I saw my relative die, that because I saw these things, I was the cause of the effect. And I didn't understand that, because it was the word of knowledge. But I didn't understand that it was God showing me through the word of wisdom things to come, And so the gift was always in operation, but it wasn't until I became born again. And that's why, even coming out of Hollywood, I have great love for people, of the psychics, the Buddhists, everybody, because really those gifts that they have, as they're given to them by God. But a psychic is moving in a dimension that they can't see into the future, they can't see things to come, but when they come through the blood of Jesus and the cross, then the fullness of that gift is then operational legally by the power of the Holy Spirit. Yeah. And so coming into your meetings, I would be the same way. I would say, I just want a word. I want him to give me a word. I just want a word. And then one day, I'll never forget, you were ministering in a meeting, and this was in the late 80s, and you pointed directly at me. So I thought, and it's my moment. And you said, no, the lady behind you. How many of you have had that?
He was a popping fool then too. He was going...
I was a popping fool. Yeah, I was.
I'm just kidding.
But you prophesied to this young girl who had heroin in her pocket. She was pregnant. She's denying it the whole time. Remember that? On the stage? She's about 16 years old. She's denying it. You said, no, you have it in your pocket. It's a yellow pill with a black dot and a baggie. She said, no. You said you have two brothers. You named them. You said they were in prison. And then she, weeping, takes out the pills and shows them to you and drops to her knees and gets mightily delivered, and a young apostle in her womb was saved. And that's when I got it. I said, God, I don't want him to give me a word. I need to know you like he does.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's such an incredible point, because as I was saying, this guy, this person that we both know, it was a prophet and would follow me. And, eventually one day, he told me this himself. he said, I'll be on the stage and I try and get something really precise. And then he said, one day I got the name, George. Well, I don't know if it was George, but and he said, I looked at the guy, said, who's George? And he said, oh, he's my brother. And then the guy said to me, and I didn't know what to do with it after that. I was lost. So I said, well, that serves you right. God's trying to show you. It's more than just that if you'd said you have a brother, then God would have just be, you were so concentrating on being so precise that you could impress people that, and that's the thing about me is that when I started all that, when it started happening, was very weird because I always hear, and this is a story that that nobody knows. It all really started. It started when I was a kid too, but I didn't know what it was.
Wow.
But when I was in, and I remember I had no church upbringing whatsoever, so I had no religious spirit, so to speak. I didn't know how to be religious. They taught me that the first 2 years of my conversion. Too. Right, I was completely free. When I got baptized, the Spirit was the most fascinating thing. I mean, I remember getting filled with the Spirit and then going to a store owned by a Greek and just speaking in tongues into him and saying, and he'd look at me like I'm crazy. I said, don't you understand? And he'd say, no, I don't understand. Well, I said, you have to. I'm going to do it again. And I'd speak in tongues. That's how simple and pure I was in it.
Wow.
I'd be at a bus stop in Port Elizabeth, and I'd turn around to people and I'd start speaking in tongues, just hoping that God would do something. And it was such a beautiful gift for me to have. I just speak all the time. That's why I've developed this amazing tongue, diversity of tongues, but because I loved it so much. But I remember when I went into the first Pentecostal church, and to me it was just amazing. They were clapping hands, and it was just so beautiful to me that because church was like that, and speaking in tongues, and they were loud, and I loved it. And so I'd come out of rock and I'd come out of heroin and everything. So when I started prophesying on the piano, they stopped me and they said, you can't do that. You must stick to the song we're singing. So we'd do like Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound, and I'd go and I'd start singing some other thing, and they'd say, you don't do that here. And I didn't know it was the prophetic gift coming through my fingers. I said, it's the first in the dance. You got to connect somewhere. So it was in my music. And so anyway, one day, so they stopped me playing the piano in this Pentecostal church. My first 6 months, they said, no piano for you. Don't touch the piano. So they didn't like it. They said, this is too fancy and all this. So, which they told Ray Charles and everybody that left the church and made it in the world. Anyway, so my first prophecy I got was, it wasn't a prophecy. I spoke in tongues, and then I gave the interpretation of the tongue. And that was called prophecy. Well, it's not, because prophecy is prophecy. The interpretation of tongues is, it's me praying. So therefore, the interpretation is going to be whatever you're praying, and that is a mystery. But being ignorant, I thought it was. And so I'd pray in tongues first, but I was actually prophesying. I wasn't interpreting the tongue. So I'd pray in tongues, and then I'd start prophesying, thinking it was the interpretation, and I started saying, there's someone in this building, and you were in a meeting, Billy Graham, Cape Town, on the 4th month of the 3rd day of 1974, and you turned your back on God, and you've come into this meeting today and this person was on the balcony, started screaming and running down, and of course I'm frightened, and of course it erupted. And afterwards, they told me that was the exact day that he went to a Billy Graham crusade and was basically on his deathbed, and had been brought to church. Not on his deathbed, but he was very sick, and had been brought to the meeting and rededicate his life back to the Lord. That was the beginning for me, okay? So that's just so people can understand that, and that's why I wanted you on, because I want people to realize you got to start somewhere. Where was the first moment of obedience? Because if you don't do that, you're never going to go any further. Like I said, you're never going to know until you step out of the boat.
I lived off that one.
Yeah. And so I tell people, you got to start somewhere. We do that with giving. Now other people are giving because we say, rather than give nothing, give $2, $3. And the $3, people started giving on the internet, on our broadcast, and the $3 developed into $6 because now he's giving seed to the sower.